When legends collide, Denzel Washington versus Stephen Colbert, the interview that exploded on air. What happens when a Hollywood titan walks into a studio expecting a conversation and gets ambushed instead? You get fire. You get friction. You get a moment so charged, so raw that even the network suits were left scrambling behind the scenes. And the audience? Speechless. Electrified. Twitter in meltdown. TikTok dissecting every raised brow, every clipped phrase. It was supposed to be simple. Predictable. Denzel Washington, grace in motion, steel in voice, was booked for a classic late-night sit-down to promote his latest film. A handshake. A few laughs. Cut to commercial. But that night on The Late Show, what unfolded was anything but predictable. Instead of a smooth, flattering segment, viewers got a showdown. A live, slow-burning confrontation that ended with Denzel being quietly whisked away during a commercial break, his chair left conspicuously empty for the rest of the show. Before we dive into what exactly went down, what set it off, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss what really happened behind the curtain. It all began like any other night. The applause thundered as Colbert welcomed the legendary, the incomparable Denzel Washington to the stage. Denzel stepped out calm as a monk, regal as a king. A brief, firm handshake. A nod to the audience. He took his seat, shoulders squared, eyes sharp. The opening minutes were textbook, casual banter, a few rehearsed quips, a light poke at Denzel's famously intense routine. "So Denzel," Colbert said, his grin already stretching wide, "I hear you wake up at 4 a.m. every day. Is that real, or are you just trying to make the rest of us feel bad?" Laughter. Applause. Denzel nodded slowly. "It's real. Always has been. Structure keeps me sharp. Keeps me standing." Colbert chuckled, tilting his head. "Yeah, but come on, unless you're baking bread or chasing cows, who needs to be up that early? You're making the rest of us look lazy." More laughter. But Denzel didn't smile. "What works for me doesn't have to work for you," he said evenly. "I'm not bragging. I'm just explaining what's kept me grounded in a chaotic business." The mood shifted subtly at first. Colbert blinked. A beat too long. He wasn't used to pushback this early. He leaned in, recalibrating. Denzel began to speak about his film. He spoke of legacy, of how the role echoed his upbringing in Mount Vernon, New York. "I come from a place where nothing was promised. I don't forget that. I bring it with me into every role." Then came the pivot. Sharp. Unexpected. Colbert cut in, voice lighter than his words. Sure. But in this political climate, isn't it a little complicated? Romanticizing the working-class struggle when you're living in a multi-million-dollar estate?" The room froze. The smiles faded. The laughter choked. Denzel's expression didn't change, but something in his gaze sharpened. A storm behind calm eyes. "I'm not sure I follow," he said, voice low, deliberate. "There's nothing political about honoring where you come from. There's integrity in hard work." But Colbert pressed, tilting his head like a cat with a cornered mouse. "Don't you think there's a disconnect? A Hollywood star preaching grit and struggle from behind mansion walls." Gasps. Uneasy shifting in the seats. The camera panned, brows raised, lips pursed. Something real was happening. And it wasn't funny. Denzel exhaled once, slow and steady. "Stephen, I came here to talk about the work. About craft. If I wanted to debate my tax bracket, I'd be on a different stage." Off camera, frantic hand motions from a producer. A sharp throat cut gesture. "Wrap it. Now." But Colbert ignored it. He leaned closer, voice tightening. "But don't celebrities owe the truth? If you're selling an image that doesn't match your life anymore, isn't that a kind of lie?" And there it was. The spark. The fire behind Denzel's eyes flickered into flame. "I owe the truth," he repeated slowly. "Stephen, I've lived the truth. I've bled for the truth in my roles. I've never pretended to be anything I'm not." "Have you?" The audience? Dead silent. Then cut. Abrupt. Commercial. When The Late Show returned, Colbert sat alone. Smiling barely. Breezing into the next segment like nothing had happened. But something had happened. And the viewers knew it. Social media erupted. What happened to Denzel? Why the sudden cut? Was this planned? A stunt? Sources backstage painted a much messier picture. The moment the cameras faded to black, Colbert reportedly tore off his mic, his smile dissolving. He stood. Marched over. Voice low but seething. "What do you think you're doing?" Denzel stood, calm but firm. "You brought me here to talk. But you came looking for a headline." Colbert's response? "This is my show. I set the tone. I asked the questions." And just like that, the studio descended into chaos. Producers swarmed. Tempers rose. The decision was made. Denzel wouldn't be returning for the next segment. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. What aired was smooth. But what happened behind the scenes? Anything but. Because that night, the curtain slipped. And the audience saw something real. A battle not just between two men, but between image and authenticity, control and defiance. And it left a mark Hollywood won't soon forget. When the curtain falls, Denzel Washington's silent exit and Colbert's crumbling control. Denzel didn't storm out. He didn't shout. He simply stood calm, unshaken, like a man who's seen bigger battles and refused to flinch. I came here to discuss a film, he said, his voice even and immovable. Not to play the role of your political pawn. Where I come from, there's something called respect. Especially for your guests. The words weren't loud, but they rang out like a gavel. A couple of staffers exchanged glances. One leaned toward the other and murmured, "I've never seen him this," rattled. Then, like a spark igniting dry kindling, Colbert stepped forward, frustration flaring behind his eyes. "You know what your issue is, Denzel?" he snapped, finger jabbing toward the actor's chest. "You act like a tough upbringing gives you moral authority over the rest of us. But let's not pretend you've been in the Hollywood bubble longer than anyone." Denzel didn't move. Didn't blink. But when he spoke, the chill in his voice sliced through the air. "And you think a punchline gives you the right to ambush your guests?" he shot back. "I've been honest my whole career. The question is, have you?" Panic rippled through the crew. Phones buzzed. Stage managers whispered. The control room lit up with messages. The show was unraveling. A senior producer stepped in, whispering to Colbert like a man approaching a volatile animal. "We've still got 2 segments to get through. And another guest waiting." But Colbert brushed him off, loud enough for half the crew to hear. "I'm not going back out there if he is," he barked. "He leaves or I do." The room froze. No one moved. No one dared breathe. Denzel looked around slowly, utter disbelief etched into his face. "You're serious?" he asked, stunned. "You're kicking me off because I didn't let you talk down to me?" Colbert squared up. "This isn't a movie set," he shot back. "This is my stage. And we do things my way." That's when the executive producer, pale and tight-lipped, stepped in like a referee who knew the fight had already gone too far. "Denzel, maybe we find another time to do this. Cooler heads, calmer energy," he said cautiously. And just like that, Denzel saw it. The game. The double standard. The quiet politics of power. "So this is what it is," he muttered. "He throws a fit and I get escorted out." "It's not personal," the exec tried. But Denzel cut him off. "It's entirely personal." With a slow, deliberate motion, he unhooked his mic, handing it over like a final word. "This was never about the movie," he said, voice steady. "He came at me the moment I sat down." Security appeared hovering at the edge of the chaos. "No need," Denzel said, holding up a hand. "I know where the door is." The silence was unbearable. No one dared speak as he collected his belongings. But just before he turned to go, he looked Colbert straight in the eye, one last time. "You know the difference between you and me?" he said, quiet but cutting. "When the cameras roll, I become someone else. When they stop, I go back to being me. Always have. Can you say the same?" Colbert stood frozen, jaw tight, face red, but silent. And with that, Denzel walked away. Composed. Unshaken. Unapologetic. Backstage, time seemed to stutter. A young assistant scrambled over, clutching a few personal items she thought he might have forgotten. She handed them over, eyes wide. "For what it's worth," she whispered, "this isn't the first time something like this has happened." Denzel took the items, gave her a knowing nod. "Won't be the last," he said without looking back. Outside, flashbulbs exploded. Reporters shouted over one another. Denzel said nothing, just one line as he climbed into the waiting SUV. "Watch the tape. It says it all." Meanwhile, inside the studio, chaos was quietly being papered over with showbiz polish. Colbert's team huddled like a war room. "No references to what just happened," he instructed through clenched teeth. "Bump up the musical act. I'll stretch if we run long." The audience, still in their seats, still waiting, sensed something was off. They couldn't quite name it, but the room felt colder. In the green room, the next guest, a Hollywood A-lister herself, watched the monitor, eyebrows raised. "Everything okay?" she asked a passing crew member. "Just a little schedule change," the staffer said with a rehearsed smile. "Mr. Washington had to leave early." Back on stage, the floor manager gave the countdown. "Back in 5, 4, 3. Colbert slipped into camera mode. "Welcome back," he said cheerfully, voice smooth to perfection. Denzel Washington had to step away, but we've still got a fantastic night ahead. The applause came, but it was uneasy. Short. Off rhythm. Like clapping after a funeral speech. And while the show rolled on, the walls backstage told a different story. Colbert, now off camera again, turned sharp. "Who cleared him?" he snapped. Did anyone even bother reviewing his prep notes? We looked like amateurs. A junior producer spoke up hesitantly. We sent him the standard outline. His team expected a typical promo spot. Typical doesn't mean we play softball, Colbert bit back. This is a show, not a daycare. Silence. Across the room, one of the staff writers leaned toward a colleague and muttered under his breath. Funny how the rules only get rewritten when the guest isn't someone he likes. Nobody replied, but eyes met. Quietly, something had shifted. The next segment began. Cameras rolled. Music played. On the surface, everything was back to normal. But backstage? The energy had curdled. Whispers spread. Heads shook. The damage was done. And outside that building, a leak had already sprung. By morning, it was everywhere. A viral clip. A storm of tweets. Eyewitness posts from audience members. Craziest taping I've ever been to. Denzel disappeared mid-interview and Colbert just moved on like nothing happened. Something had cracked and no amount of smooth editing could put it back together. Behind closed doors, when the cameras stopped, the real show began. Tension didn't drain from the set after Denzel left, it thickened. You could feel it in the way the crew tiptoed around cables, the way even seasoned staff held their breath when Colbert passed. The host was rattled. Not visibly unhinged, but clipped. Tight. Snapping at small things, a mistimed lighting cue, a misplaced prop, a smudge on his mug. During the last commercial break, his voice cut like a knife through the control room. Anyone talks to the press about this, anyone, they're done. Fired. No warning. But it was already too late. The story had spilled into the wild. Fans were comparing notes online, piecing together what happened from shaky audience cell phone videos and whispers from backstage. And just when everyone thought the drama had walked out with Denzel, there was a knock at the dressing room door. Colbert was inside, holed up with his head writer and executive producer, trying to put a spin on the unraveling night. The knock stopped them mid-sentence. "We need to talk," came Denzel's voice, measured, low, unshaken. Man to man. No cameras. No script. The executive producer moved to block. "Mr. Colbert's not available right now." "I wasn't talking to you," Denzel said, not unkind, but unmovable. "This is between me and Steven." A pause. Then the door opened. Colbert stood in the doorway, jaw clenched like stone. 5 minutes, he said. Alone. He turned and waved his team out. They filed past Denzel with uneasy glances as if leaving two predators alone in a cage. The door clicked shut. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The tension was different now, less about performance, more about pride. Denzel broke the silence. "What was that?" he asked, gesturing vaguely toward the stage. "You invited me here to talk about a film I gave 2 years of my life to. And you turned it into a political ambush." Colbert didn't back down. Arms crossed, voice cool. "This show tackles real topics. We're not just a PR stop." Denzel's brow lifted slightly. "So talking about where I grew up, what shaped me, suddenly makes me a target? That's not journalism, Steven. That's theater. And you turned me into your opening act. You came in expecting a love fest," Colbert said, shrugging. "That's not how it works here." "No," Denzel replied, voice now like steel beneath velvet. "I came expecting the interview your producers promised. This was supposed to be about the film. If you wanted a debate, you should have said so before I walked on stage." Colbert turned, walked behind his desk. Sat down. Subtle move, but the message was clear. "My turf, my rules. My viewers expect depth," he said flatly. "I ask hard questions. That's the brand. Your viewers expect to be challenged, sure," Denzel said. "But they also expect honesty. And what you pulled out there wasn't honest. You weren't looking for answers, you were looking for a moment. Something viral. Something to boost clips." Colbert bristled. "So now I'm the villain because I don't hand out compliments?" "No," Denzel said. "You're the villain because you invited a man to your stage under one pretense and then tried to corner him under another." There was a beat. Colbert's eyes flicked to the clock. Knock knock. "Mr. Colbert," came the voice of the stage manager. 3 minutes till you're back." Colbert stood up. "We're done." Denzel nodded once. "Yeah, we are." But then he paused at the door. "One thing before I go," he said. Colbert froze mid-step. "I grew up with nothing," Denzel said quietly. "And I've never forgotten it. That truth lives in everything I do. You say you deal in truth too, but tell me this, when's the last time you had a real conversation with someone who doesn't think exactly like you?" For a heartbeat, Colbert didn't answer. And in that heartbeat, just barely, something flickered behind his eyes. Regret? Reflection? Recognition? Gone before it could settle. "My audience knows what I stand for," he said stiffly. Denzel opened the door. "Yeah," he said. "But what about the people who've stopped watching?" He took a step out. Paused again. You used to be the kind of comic who could sit with anyone. Presidents. Authors. Fighters. Farmers. Now you're just another voice in an echo chamber. Colbert didn't respond. He didn't have to. The executive producer slipped back in, headset in hand. Time to go. Denzel gave a polite nod and walked away. Good luck with the rest of your show, he said over his shoulder. Something tells me you're gonna need it. He made his way through the corridor, calm and unhurried. As he passed the green room, a young actress, wide-eyed, nervously flipping note cards, looked up. Everything okay? She asked softly, clearly sensing the storm in the air. Denzel gave her a gentle smile. Just a little creative disagreement, he said. Then, with a wink, word of advice, talk about the movie. Nothing else. She nodded, her confidence clearly shaken. Back on set, Colbert sat back down. A makeup artist dabbed at his forehead, which now shimmered under the lights. Whether from heat or heat from everything else was unclear. How are we playing this? He muttered to his producer. No answer. Just a tired look and a deep breath. The cameras were rolling again. The show would go on. But something had cracked that night. And no amount of lighting or editing could hide it. We're not doing this, Colbert said, voice sharp and stripped of warmth. No commentary. Bump the musical act up. I'll pad the second half with monologue. The producer hesitated. The audience saw it, Stephen. They're not blind. If we don't address it, then let them wonder, Colbert cut in, eyes hard. It's my show. I decide the story. The floor manager counted down. Cameras poised. Colbert adjusted his tie with a flick of the wrist. The mask slid back into place like it had 100 times before. Welcome back to the Late Show, he said, smile polished to a sheen. Unfortunately, Denzel Washington had to step away. But we've still got a fantastic show lined up for you tonight. Polite applause followed, tentative, thin. The red applause sign blinked, but the room's rhythm was off. Laughter came late. The chuckles felt hollow. People knew. They felt it. Something had cracked, and no one, not even Colbert, could patch it on the fly. In the control booth, the director leaned toward the EP, whispering under the ambient buzz, "We're really just going to ignore it?" A voice behind them answered quietly. "Those are the orders. Pretend nothing happened." But pretending wasn't so easy. Colbert moved into the next segment with practiced grace, but the shift was unmistakable. The charm had a static edge. The timing was off. His eyes didn't sparkle. The set felt colder. Stiffer. The contract, the quiet one between the host and his audience, had been breached. The illusion of spontaneity, of sincerity, was broken. And once broken, it couldn't be unbroken. Meanwhile, Denzel Washington was already in the back seat of a black SUV, sliding past the press outside the studio with practiced ease. Flashes popped. Questions were shouted. He said only one thing before the door closed. "Watch the show. That's all." His phone buzzed as they pulled away. It was Dwayne Johnson. "You all right?" The Rock asked, skipping any hello. "I'm good," Denzel said, looking out the window at the city receding behind him. "Just got a reminder of why I stick to the work." "Let me guess," Dwayne said, dry. "Another host who thinks interviews are interrogations." "Something like that," Denzel replied. He didn't want a conversation. He wanted a spectacle. A soundbite. And when he couldn't get it, he unraveled. Silence passed between them, a silence of mutual understanding. "Thing is," Denzel added after a beat, "I'd have talked about privilege, about class, about all of it. If it were honest. But it wasn't. It was bait. Wrapped in politeness. Delivered like a trap." Back at the studio, the rest of the taping dragged like a marionette with tangled strings. Colbert's monologue lacked bite. His guest banter sounded rehearsed, almost robotic. Even his grin looked stretched too thin, a little too long. The audience clapped, but out of obligation. The room had been electric hours ago. Now it buzzed with unease. During the last break, Colbert leaned toward his head writer, voice low and clipped. "This thing's blowing up online already. We need a strategy for tomorrow." The writer looked wary. "We going with an apology? Humor? Or do we stand our ground?" Colbert exhaled sharply, tension radiating from his jaw. "We spin it. Call it a timing issue. Segment ran long. Keep it vague. Don't touch anything that happened backstage." The writer frowned. "You think people buy that?" Audience saw the tension. "Some are already posting." "They have to buy it," Colbert said, eyes narrowing. "The alternative is letting the internet write the story for us." And for the first time that night, beneath all the poise, a crack showed in his confidence. Because deep down he knew it wasn't just a segment gone wrong. He'd lost control of the room. And worse, people had seen it. As the audience filtered out into the night, the chatter buzzed louder than anything that had made it on air. Did you see Denzel's face when Colbert went off script? One woman whispered. I've never felt the kind of tension in a live taping. Her friend nodded. And the weirdest part? How they just moved on. Like we didn't all just witness a bomb go off. Two men. Two very different nights. Denzel went home, made tea, and sat with his family. He flipped through scripts for an upcoming press tour, eyes calm, posture relaxed. He didn't rant. Didn't replay the night. Because he didn't need to. He knew who he was. And he didn't need an audience to validate it. Authenticity doesn't flinch. It doesn't perform. It just is. Colbert, on the other hand, sat alone with his phone, eyes locked on a screen that wouldn't let him forget. Tweets, threads, TikToks, audience accounts, frame-by-frame analyses, memes dissecting his body language. He didn't sleep. He wasn't angry because it had gone badly. He was angry because it had been real. And real is unpredictable, uncontrollable, dangerous. Because in that one unscripted moment, everything stripped away. And the man behind the charm, the wit, the polished satire, he wasn't ready. Denzel had stood his ground. Colbert had fallen back into the safety of performance. In the end, this wasn't just a late-night fumble. It was a collision between two versions of truth, the kind you prepare for and the kind that shows up uninvited and unmoved. And that's why it stuck with people. Not just because it was dramatic. Not just because it went viral. Because for once, someone refused to play along. And only one of them walked away whole. If this deep dive into the Denzel-Colbert confrontation gave you a new perspective, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got more unfiltered stories coming your way. But now tell us, was Colbert just doing his job or did he cross a line that night? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about what real authenticity looks like.